Episode 1 Superman, Man of Tomorrow. Part 1 The Cast. Superman will be played by Virgin River's Benjamin Hollingsworth. Lois Lane will be played by Mission Impossible and Dune's Rebecca Ferguson. Jimmy Olsen will be played by Peter and Wendy and Deadpool 2's Julian Dennison. Perry White will be played by the legendary Kamal Nanjiani, who is best known from The Big Sick and Eternals. Morgan Edge, the main antagonist, will be played by Big Hero 6's Daniel Henney. Fun fact, actually, Morgan Edge in this movie is inspired by Daniel's Tadashi in Big Hero 6. The Megalomaniac Key will be played by the Layers Hari Kanjanpur. The Pyrotechnic Torture will be played by the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina's Abigail Cohn. Helgrimet will be played by Uncharted's Tati Gabriel. Blackrock will be played by Loki's Sophia DiMartino. The legendary Bill Murray will play Peter Silverstone. Lucia Silverstone will be played by Bone star Emily Deschanel. Finally, only one actor can truly play the charismatic and devious new god and TV star Glorious Godfrey, and that is Barry star Bill Hader. Part 2 The Story. Oh yes, and that's why this movie is going to be about Superman in a world grappling with the decline of print media, which I know you roll your eyes at, or at least shudder. And the Daily Planet, which is a print media organization, is struggling to stay relevant. Clark Kent is a writer for the newspaper and focuses on a mysterious, superpowered figure who brings down the crime in the city. And meanwhile, Lois Lane, an ambitious investigative journalist, tries to kind of find a wider audience for her work. There's a billionaire media mogul, Morgan Edge, who arrives in Metropolis and kind of brings in this digital era of news. And in doing that, it hurts the Daily Planet, which is obviously the primary source of news, but is also not in the digital news business. So his news empire goes and recruits Lois Lane, while Jimmy Olsen, who already works for Edge, is assigned to kind of work with Lois Lane as they start their, making their roots in Metropolis.
Right.
So the Daily Planet, which relies on Clark and his identity as Superman to kind of get them stories, because right now the primary thing that keeps people reading is the fact that Clark Kent has this kind of, connection to Superman, which nobody knows why. Obviously, we do, but no one else does. Morgan Edge kind of becomes resentful for this because he says, we need this, and Clark won't work for him. So what he ends up doing, he tries to orchestrate a plan to kind of force Superman into the public eye, but Superman obviously easily defeats the Morgan Edge's killers, also known as Intergang. This leads to the birth of Blackrock, which is promoted by Edge's company as this kind of anti-Superman, although not a direct clone of Superman, like someone who they give kind of a super suit to kind of mimic some of Superman's powers in an effort to kind of have their own quote-unquote Superman.
It's kind of like the Lex Luthor in like
pretty
Rebirth.
Much, but I just hate Lex Luthor's existence and will never refer to him. I know you do, but I refuse to use his name. So Lucia Silverstone is the scientist who's kind of behind that, which Lois suspects Blackrock's origins are kind of rooted in evil, and discovers a connection between Blackrock, Lucia Silverstone, and Peter Silverstone, who was an unethical scientist who was sent to jail. She discovers all this through her investigative reporting skills.
Right.
But Morgan Edge obviously sees this and sends Torture, one of the Intergang members, to kidnap her. Superman teams up with Jimmy to rescue Lois, exposing Edge and his kind of unethical and evil things for what they are, and obviously defeat Blackrock in an obviously electrifying action sequence, which DC is obviously known for doing, right? They're amazing action sequences. But in the end, there's an end credit scene where Morgan Edge is approached by Glorious Godfrey, who offers him a way to eliminate Superman.
Right. So this definitely focuses more on like the Clark Kent and image of Superman sort of side of things, as opposed to like the, origin story that we see in like Man of Steel and stuff like that.
So basically, just like James Gunn has said. And, this all started 8 months ago, so all the stuff that's happened since then with, Superman and DC, we are not at all talking about going to reference, because that was well before we started this. But I wanted this to be a different Superman story where we didn't care about his origin story. Everyone knows how Superman was created, right? But also not something where it's like the same kind of thing, like Lex Luthor and Zod, and also having like, Superman being Superman all the time and fighting bad guys and punching them and saving the day, right? Like I wanted a different kind of story.
Right.
And I realized, wait, Superman's a journalist. So is Lois Lane. They're journalists. They do news stuff. Why can't that be the focus, like a big part of a Superman movie? Also, it gives Lois Lane something to do where, just like in other Superman movies, she isn't just relegated to like this love interest side character who nobody really cares about, right? Like, that was my always frustration with Lois Lane, is you get these great actors and then they don't end up doing anything because they're just like the damsel in distress the entire time. And I'm like, give her a real role. Let's have her do investigations, actually save the day, right? Like, why not?
Yeah, give her more autonomy for sure.
And then I picked a villain, Morgan Edge, who basically is like Lex Luthor in every way, shape, and form. And BlackRock is basically Lex Luthor in every shape, but they're different characters.
But you just hate Lex Luthor that much.
I do. I really do. And I know you end up bringing in Lex Luthor yourself, as we'll talk about later. But I think that just starting off without any of the same kind of stuff, doing something very simple, makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And then, and then there's a few hints in there to having Metallo and the glorious Godfrey, who's obviously a new god who is on Earth now. And what do new gods on Earth mean? Darkseid probably coming at some point. And and the other thing I want to say was this is very much like a Spider-Man movie in a sense, because it is like, MJ being more of the, obviously as a journalist and stuff, and so it feels more in that vibe than what we're just typically used to with Superman. But
well, Spider-Man and Superman are very similar characters, I think, as well, because they're both very like relatable characters to the average person, as opposed to like, you get Batman and such, who's like, living a very specific, dark, traumatic life, and on this crusade that a lot of people can't really relate to, right? But with Spider-Man and Superman, it's much simpler, and they have alter egos with like normal jobs and stuff. So it's definitely
exactly,
those stories are nicer.
And Spider-Man always had that leg up, so you have to always appreciate that.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So that was kind of my rationale for that. And then I wanted to just kind of throw in my few inspirations, which are Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, which is a Jack Kirby story, number 133 to 139, and Superman the Animated Series, episode 1, season 1, episode 4, and season 1, episode 12, which all gave me kind of my inspiration when I was creating the story.
Yeah, all good picks.